So, so I want to give some help in doing these claim sheets. So I've already gone through, I've read my article, and you can see that I've already marked it up with the 8 annotations. That's the first step. So I've got the article read, I've marked it, I've got a good understanding of the article. The next thing I want to do is I want to either identify my subject or my verb. Now, subject might be easier. If there's an action that's happening in the article, then maybe that's what I want to look for and think about, well, who's doing that action? But I'm not really sure what the action is in this article. And so what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go through and I'm going to try to find words that come up really commonly. So one word I see commonly is doctor when I'm just kind of scanning through. And actually, because I'm digital, I can do this. So I'm going to go and I'm going to look up how many times doctor shows up. Doctor shows up apparently 13, 14 times. That's a lot. And if I added physician to that, that shows up another 6. That's 20 times. I have, I think, 21 paragraphs. If I added medical school to that, I got another 2, right? So it seems like this is something about doctors. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this down. I can change this later if it doesn't work. So doctors and medical school students. I don't know. That's what I'm going to go with. So now I want to ask myself, what does this article talk about doctors doing? So when I'm looking at this, doctors choosing lower paying specialties. Okay, that's 1. However, becoming remains. Okay, becomes challenging. That doesn't really help me. The idea is hard work will pay off. Why are we worried about the hard work not paying off? Okay, here, there's waning interest. Waning, I know, means kind of fading. So there's fading interest. And here it's a recent report from the Association of Medical Colleges that projected a shortage. Okay. And then here I've got this idea of drought, of doctors' drought. So it seems like people are leaving. So I might say my verb as fewer people are becoming doctors. Really, that's a whole idea, though. So I think I might say medical students are not completing. That's not exactly it either. Okay, well, doctors are leaving their practices. That's something. And I might, maybe I just want to leave. I'm just going to nix this for right now. I don't even know that I'm going to need this. So I'm just going to go ahead and for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and say doctors. And if I want to pull this idea of medical school students in, then maybe I can find a way to do that later. Let me see if I can find the tool I want. Okay, I'm just going to, is that strikeout? No, it's clear formatting. That's not helpful. Let me just do it this way for right now. I'm just going to highlight this red as in not going to use that. So now I want to think about how and why. So why are doctors leaving their medical practices? So I'm just going to kind of look, and I'm looking really for things about doctors leaving. So this talks about a shortage, and talks about a protected shortage, but it doesn't tell me why that shortage exists. It tells me that there is a shortage. That might be an important piece of evidence for me later, but doesn't really. Okay, young people are becoming less interested in pursuing medical careers with the rise of STEM jobs. That might be a reason why. So I might say something like, why young people are becoming in STEM careers. So I want to keep going. That kind of matches my STEM careers piece. Good, I've got some evidence I could use that for later. I don't feel like this really helps me prove anything. This just tells me why people in middle America hire their firms. Doesn't tell me why they're having a harder time attracting people. So I'm really asking myself, why are doctors leaving their medical practice? Well, this doesn't really tell me why they're leaving their medical practice, so maybe I need to add something to this. So medical school students, maybe I do need to add something. Maybe I don't want medical. Well, I'm thinking about what this set up here where it talks about young people. So maybe I want to say something about okay, I'm going to come back to this. So young people more interested in STEM careers. Maybe I'm going to say fewer medical school students complete their training. That's similar to what I'm looking at. So, okay, so I've got this other thing here that I just saw where it talks about graduating medical school doesn't mean you'll get a residency. There aren't enough medical school residencies. So I wanted to look up, I wasn't quite sure what a residency was. So I went ahead, okay. Go Wikipedia, that'd actually be okay. Preparing for your residency. Oh, here. So probably don't mean an official place of residence. Okay, here. So it's a period of advanced training in the medical specialty, normally following graduation, and from medical school and license to practice medicine. Okay, so it seems like it's an additional training step. So if there aren't enough training steps, there aren't enough slots. So I'm imagining it kind of like a learner's permit for medical school. So I could see how if you couldn't do that, that would be a problem. So I might say there are not enough So that's something. And then the last thing I want to mention, I thought I saw one other thing when I was reading through. Yeah, this ERHs. So, and that seems to fit why doctors themselves are leading medical practices. So I think I want to add that too. So I might say, growing. So it seems like these ERHs are not real good and people don't feel real comfortable using them. So I guess growing use of EHR, so that's electronic health records. I can kind of picturing my doctor typing on a computer when I go there. Growing use of not being effective. That seems like another reason why. So that really helps me because now I can look at my one sentence summary and I can just pull this together. So I'm going to say fewer students are completing medical training and more doctors are leaving their practices. And then I could say, because of interest in STEM careers, growing use of ERHs, which are not seen as effective, and a lack of residency slots. Now, So that's actually pretty thorough. You probably don't need to be quite that thorough, but I don't see a problem with that. And that's still not an overwhelmingly long sentence. So next, I want to think about my main idea. And my main idea is going to be different than my one-word sentence because it's just one major idea. So I'm just going to go ahead and say something like, fewer students are completing their and leaving their practices. So everything before because, if I just take my subject and my verb, I actually feel okay about that being my main idea. There's a really quick way that I can check my main idea that's kind of a gut check. So I want to look at what I've got here at my main idea. Fewer students are completing medical training and more doctors are leaving their practices. Why physicians are leaving their practices to pursue their other careers. So if I read it against my headline, it should be pretty close. Why physicians are leaving their practices to pursue other careers. Well, if I look over here, I've got doctors are leaving their practices. I don't have necessarily to pursue other careers, but that's really my why. So even if I dropped off this, I could, but I feel confident in that. It pretty well matches my headline. Now, that's a quick gut check. That's why you don't want to just go from the headline right away. You always want to use it as a check, but it's not always going to be accurate. Here's the other way. My main idea should cover basically every paragraph of my article. So if I pick a paragraph at random, let's see, how about this one? It should basically match. So this shows Director of Recruitment at EF, Educational First in London, was a general practitioner. Okay, it seems like they were a doctor for several years before heading to the US to study healthcare management policy. She wound up leaving medicine to focus on education because she felt to some extent she defaulted into a career that turned out to be more tedious than expected. Well, that's an example of a doctor leaving their practice. So that seems to fit. If I picked another paragraph, let's go with this one. How about this one? Waning interest being a physician, a recent report from an association projected a shortage. Again, this seems to fit. It's talking about how people are leaving. What about this one? Perhaps it's a more interesting story on why those deciding to eschew medical degrees, I know eschew means to kind of, I've got that over here, avoid medical degrees. Then it's with people training who became doctors and then decided to opt up another path. So again, it works. So I've tried it against 3 different paragraphs, and every time my main idea has basically been the same, or more correctly, that paragraph that I read fit this main idea. So I feel pretty comfortable that the main idea works because I've checked it. So now I just want to ask myself, what in the article proves this to me? And really this goes back to that idea of how and why. So I want to find examples of these. So what I often do is I will ask myself, I'll kind of say, fewer students are completing medical training and doctors are leaving their practice because, and then I want to complete the because with one of my quotes. So I thought this one was pretty good. So I want to see if this really helps me prove it. So I'm going to go ahead and put that here. So if I were to say fewer students are completing their medical training and more doctors are leaving their practices because there aren't enough residency slots for medical grads. So you have that population of people who have an MD but didn't practice for that reason. That does seem to make sense to me. So it does seem to be a good quote. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use that. I can't just leave it there. I need to tag it. Tags always have 3 things. They always have who my speaker is. So I need to go over here. My speaker is Fowler. So I want to look at who Craig Fowler. Okay, Craig Fowler. So up here, I've got Craig Fowler. And then I need to talk about who Craig Fowler is. So looks like he's regional VP. So I'm going to go ahead and say Now I could just copy this. I have to trust who Medicafirm is. By the way, there's a comma here. But I think I'm just going to say instead regional VP of a, and it says that it's a national physician search and consultant agency. A national search and so this tells me why I trust him, because he's a VP of a national agency that looks for doctors. So he probably knows something about why people are leaving the medical profession. Then I've got comma again. And then I need a speech verb. So I'm just going to go with said, comma. So Craig Fowler, regional VP of a national physician search and consulting agency, said, here's my quote, done. I need to find one more piece of evidence. So like this, for example. Well, I said this is an expert, so I could use that as a quote, right? And so I want to go back over here, and I could put this in, but I want to do the same thing I did before. I want to ask myself here, if I were to complete this and I were to say, fewer students are completing their medical training and more doctors are leaving their practice because there are those doctors who left medicine because the pros far outweighed the cons. Or even if I said because the cons of the job started to far outweigh the pros. I don't feel like that really tells me anything. I don't feel like this really helps me understand anymore. So I think it's a lousy piece of evidence, so I'm not going to use it because I want to choose the best evidence. So I could do something like this about the shortages. I'm going to do the same thing. If I said they're leaving their practices because the Association of Medical Colleges projected a shortage. Okay, that actually does work. I think it does show me that they're leaving their practices. It doesn't show me why they're leaving their practices. I'm okay with this being used as evidence. I don't know that I'm going to choose to use it, not because it doesn't work, but because I think I could find better evidence. So I'm going to look again. So like this anecdote, again, anecdotes are something I could use with the enforcement of HRs. So I feel like I could use that. That might even be more effective if I used this about EHRs earlier. So if I were using 3, I'd probably use this one and this one. I think I'm going to go ahead and use this one because I think this one holds better. I think I could probably explain this one a little bit better. So I'm going to do the same thing again. Practices because some cite electronic health records is part of the reason, especially, okay, that feels a little repetitive, especially old school doctors who don't pride themselves in computer skills. This research conducted by the Harris Poll found EHRs need a complete overhaul. Okay, I could see that. If they have to use this technology, they don't feel good about using this technology, it's hard for them, and they don't think it's terribly effective, I can see how that would explain. I feel like I could explain that quote. So I've got that. I think I'm going to build this one kind of the other way because I saw this is research from Stanford Medicine. So I'm going to say research from and I'm actually going to leave off the Harris Poll thing because I think it's conducted by the Harris Poll, but the research is done by Stanford. Okay. Now, I need to get some credibility. I'm actually kind of okay with leaving it just as Stanford Medicine, but, you know, if I'm worried that the teacher isn't going to know who Stanford Medicine is, then, and I want to really get credibility built in, let me go ahead and do that. So Stanford Medicine, Stanford is an Ivy League college. It's one of the best medical schools. So we're talking about, this is a school where they first actively, the first human heart transplant. So what I might say is research from Stanford Medicine, one of the leading sources of medical research in the country. And I think I can say that given what I'm looking over here, that this is the first place to do human lung transplants. I feel pretty comfortable saying that they are a leading source. I said one of, I didn't say the. So, and I'm just going to say showed, comma. So showed in this case is my speech verb again. And then I can put in my quote. Showed as part of the reason. And I want to make that my capital because that's where I'm starting. As part of the reason. And I can actually go ahead and as long as I put it in brackets, I'm altering the quote, but I'm saying I'm altering it in a way that doesn't really change the meaning. Part of the reason doctors leave the practice. Now, yeah, I'm good with that. So I could go ahead and drop this. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do this a different way. Stanford Medicine, and I'm just going to do showed 59%, and I'm just going to go ahead and go to that. 59%. I think this is of doctors, so I'm going to go ahead and do exactly what I showed before. Doctors. So I haven't changed the quote. I've just added context. I think AHRs need. And 40% see more challenges than benefits. So I've got this tagged. It's research from Stanford Medicine. I've got why I believe them. I've got my speech verb. I figured out a better way to kind of reduce the quote to make it fit better. Technically, these are going to be one quotes because they're inside quotes. So we're going to do that real quick because it'll bug me otherwise. And then that one actually gets 3. So that's pretty good. I feel good about that. The only other thing we haven't done is we haven't done which one's stronger. So I'm looking at these. We've talked a little bit about this. At this point, I don't need my stuff over here at all. Really, as long as you explain why, I'm probably going to be reasonably okay. But when I'm thinking about this, I like this because it's a statistic. This is an expert. I like the statistic a little bit better. I feel like it's more applicable to more sources. But the other thing I'm thinking about is this is telling me why people don't go on to become doctors. This is telling me why doctors are leaving. This seems more important to me. These are people who have already gone through all that work. And so I might say the second piece of evidence is stronger. Because it refers to people who have already gone through the work to become doctors. But are still choosing to walk away. While the residency's quote only refers to fewer people becoming doctors in the first place. So that might be a reason why. There are lots of reasons why. And you may disagree. You may say that the Craig Fowler one really does fit better for you because it's an expert. Okay. I think that I would question on the fact that Stanford Medicine is probably a better expert. So again, I could write that. I could write the second piece of evidence is stronger because Stanford Medicine is a better expert than some regional VP. So either way would work, but I'm looking for that explanation. So that's what my whole thing ends up looking like. I've tested everything, I've checked everything, I've tagged everything, and I feel pretty good about it. Hopefully that will help you do the same thing.